Hi, everyone. As you're cycling in, welcome to today's webinar, New UAD Changes Ahead with PCV Murcor. I'm going to give it just a few seconds as all of our attendees start coming in. If you'll please do me a favor and type where you're joining us from in the chat so we can make sure everyone can hear us. Before we get started, just to do a little bit of housekeeping, today's webinar is being recorded. If you have any questions throughout today's session, please feel free to go ahead and type those in the chat box, and they will periodically answer your questions. Approximately 24 hours after the end of today's call, you will receive an email directly from Zoom with a link to access the recording. And as they go through this session, if you have any questions, please feel free to type those in the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Candy with PCV Murcor.
Hello, everyone. We are gathered here today to discuss the new UAD changes ahead. And so upcoming changes to the appraisal form. So I wanted to introduce to you the STEAM panel. So I will be moderating this session. My name is Candy Sarah-Paiboon. I'm the Director of Client Relations at PCV Murcor. I come with 20 years of experience in the appraisal and management space in managing client and lender relationships, and I manage at PCV Murcor multiple operational and client services teams. So I help translate client expectations into client success and also operational success for the team here at PCV Murcor. I'm going to introduce our next panelist, which is David Schiffmeyer. I'll go ahead and hand it over to him to introduce himself.
Thanks, Candy. I appreciate it. My name is Dave Schiffmeyer. I'm the SVP of Operations for PCV Murcor. We're a national appraisal management company licensed in every state. And I'm a real estate appraiser, and I've been in the industry since about 2001 as an appraiser and held positions all the way from staff appraisers working for banks to appraisal management at Fannie Mae, Wells Fargo, and then here at PCV today.
And then our next panelist is Ashley.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be joining you today. I'm Ashley Beerwolf, the Director of Collateral Policy for HomeVision. We are a document understanding and appraisal review platform, so intimately involved with all things understanding appraisals and what they need to look like throughout their life cycle. I've been in the industry now for about 17 years, mostly on the appraisal management and appraisal review side. So excited to be here with you today.
And then our next panelist is Tony.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tony Pistelli. I'm the President of Valuations for RestB AI. RestB is a computer vision company that specializes in real estate, specifically MLS and valuations. And I am part of the team that develops a solution specifically for valuations. Happy to be here.
Thank you all. And so let me move. So today's webinar is about the upcoming UAD changes. And so what is the UAD 3.6 change? It's a significant change to appraisal reporting. It's probably the most significant change in 20 years. It's transitioning from a static form-based report into a dynamic system. The key changes are to include a single dynamic uniform residential appraisal report that adapts based on the property type, and it's structured against machine readable data. And it's shifting away from the traditional appraisal forms. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump right on into the questions. So let me go away from my sharing. I'm not too sure. Do you guys see my screen?
We do.
We do.
Okay. I'm trying to stop sharing, but it's not allowing me to. There we go. All right, we'll dive on in. The first question we have, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, this is the first of a three-part series So we'll dive on into, I guess, the most important question. I'll ask the panel, can you give us an overview of the UAD 3.6? What is it? Why is this change happening? And where do we currently stand on timeline? And since this is the first of the series, what should we expect to learn in the upcoming sessions?
So I'll hop in here and take that. So guys, thank you very much. I appreciate your time today. Yeah, this is a huge change, like Candy said. It's not just a change in the report, but it's a change in how appraisal data is reported, how it's structured, and how it's delivered. And so I'm going to share my screen and show you sort of what the change looks like. So let me know when you can see my screen.
We gotcha.
Okay. All right. So first thing, this does not look like an appraisal report as you guys have seen it in the past, and that's because it isn't. It's very different. It's the report has been designed to be a lot clearer and more structured and more usable so that lenders and investors and regulators and secondary markets can read the data in a more succinct way. And I just want to go through some of these slides just to give you a sense of what it looks like. So the first thing that is obviously different about the appraisal report is that there's a summary page, and a lot of the salient features of the report, the opinion of market value, the effective date of the report, the borrower's name, and that sort of thing are all pulled to the very front in a summary page. And this is to give you just an immediate snapshot of what's going on with the appraisal. And from there, you'll see that the report is designed in sections. It's organized in sections. And so one of the next section is going to talk about the assignment information, the lender-client information, whether or not an appraisal management company was used, and their information and that sort of thing. And from there, you'll see as you go into the different parts of the report, the whole thing is organized in sections. So one section is related only to the site. And you'll see the photos and exhibits for the site are all pulled into this section. So there's a lot of information here, all related to the site, so that anything that you might have related to the site, whether it's the zoning or the access, is it a private road, all of that sort of thing related to the site is pulled into this section. And from there, you'll see also, you go into the exterior of the subject. Now, this is a big change, because historically the condition was on the subject overall, and that's still used today. There is an overall condition and quality rating, but it's been broken up into interior and exterior quality. So think in terms of maybe a historic home that's beautiful on the outside, but the interior hasn't been updated in a long time. Clearly the interior and the exterior can be quite different. And again, just like in every section, it's organized so that everything about the exterior of the subject is pulled into this one area. And then I think one of the more significant changes is the grid, the appraisal grid. That's where the appraiser does the sales comparison approach, comes up with the opinion of value. It's comps. It's where they put the comps in the report. And this is a dynamic grid. So just like everything in the new UR/AR report, it's dynamic. And what I mean by that is it's sort of like TurboTax. That's what you're going to hear that in the industry. You answer a series of questions, and then the form builds based on those questions. Does the subject property have an accessory dwelling unit? If so, there's going to be a series of questions you have to answer related to that. Is it a green home? Does it have, green energy and that sort of thing? And the report will build on the basis of those fields that you're selecting. Another big change is that this report is very, very full of static enumerated values. So a lot less typing, a lot more selecting from drop-down menus, and that's to create data standardization that's really designed for machine learning and for AI type functionality to be able to go in and there's not there's a set of words and terms that you can use to key off of in the report. One other thing that's very, very interesting about this new report, there's no general addendum. So if you ever opened an appraisal today, half the appraisal is dedicated towards, the form and the exhibits, the photos and that sort of thing. And then there's another 5, 7, 10, 30 pages of general addendum where all kinds of commentary is in the report. And that makes it really difficult to understand and read the appraisal report. All of that commentary, it's been pulled into all of the unique sections of the appraisal report. So really this change is not is less about forms, and it's really about smarter data. So it's really about upgrading from a PDF format into a more of a flexible digital data set. So that's a general overview. Ashley, Tony, any other thoughts on kind of an overview of all these changes?
Yeah, thanks. I would love to hop in here. Actually, on the screen right now, on the bottom right-hand side of the screen is one of my favorite parts of these new reports, which is the additional properties analyzed and not used. Um, Currently, that is not a requirement to include, but when we're talking about the quality of reports coming through and the ability to, ensure that we have really done the most analysis that we need to on these subject properties, being able to ask the appraiser to include properties that they took a look at that may be nearby, that maybe on the surface seem really comparable, but we need to understand that and we need to communicate that sort of through the chain of folks. Being able to include those things in the report is really useful. Um, I think one of the biggest changes about this report is that, and I know you mentioned this, David, but I don't think it can be overstated. This report is completely flexible. Nothing is going to be in the same place on any report, property to property. And so, whatever processes you and your organization put in place to review these, to understand these, the systems that you use are going to need to be flexible. The folks that you have taken a look at these files are going to need to get really comfortable with the way that these new forms look and how to find information based on the section type. So it's definitely a big shift. You know, all the information is there, but it's a big change for everyone.
And as David and Ashley mentioned, the report is going to be structured in a way where there's a lot more information coming in very consistent formats. While it might look different, all of the data is going to be similar for these reports. And that really enables and allows for the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning and computer vision. You're going to see additional data sets and layers of insights folded into the creation of the appraisal upfront by the appraiser. There's web-based systems that are emerging that are allowing the appraiser to incorporate these technologies, but also on the back end in the review, you'll have a lot of assistance with additional information and technologies that we haven't seen before on the I'll say old or current appraisal form.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Tony. And I think the second part of that question is, why is this change happening? It's happening because, as Candy said in the beginning, the existing reports came out in 2005, and there hasn't been a change. So it's decades old. And really, that form was not designed for today's risk and automation and digital workflow needs. It was designed for a typewriter. The reason that there's I heard the GSE say, the reason that there's 3 comparable sales is because that's what fit on a legal size page, was 3 comparable sales. That's why that's kind of a minimum requirement. So it really was designed for processes that just aren't suitable for today. And this new UAD, it's going to add structured fields like I talked about, enumerations, standardized terminology, a lot more standardization, and it really better aligns with modern technology. And I think the goal is to improve clarity and comparability and automation while still preserving the appraiser's judgment, which is really still foundational to the entire process. So the goal is to future-proof, or to come up with something that's going to be able to work for modern technology into the foreseeable future.
And then could you guys talk about the timeline of these changes that's happening?
Candy, I happen to have that timeline up on my screen right now, and it might be helpful to see that as we're talking about it. Right now, we're about at that red line, and that's called the limited production. And mortgage companies and other providers in that chain of the process are in a testing or voluntary mode right now. And as you progress towards the right, you'll notice some stars around the word mandate. That's when everyone needs to be delivering in the 3.6 format. And further to the right, a few months later, you'll see the retirement of 2.6. That's the current form we're using today. So maybe in about a year and a half, we'll forget what the current appraisal form looks like, and we'll all be familiar with the new format.
Thanks, guys. Why is the UAD 3.6 significant, and what impact will it have on appraisers and the broader industry?
I think
Sure.
I can speak.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead. No, you, Ashley, please.
Okay. Yeah, so I think the impact that this is going to have on the broader industry is, I think, pretty hard to overstate. Appraisals to date have been, there's 6 standard pages on a regular 1004, and all of the commentary, the real meat and potatoes of the valuation, has been in the addenda. And all of the exhibits have been on all sorts of different pages, right? So the fact that we are getting all of this information into a standardized format, that all of these new AI, machine learning, large language, these tools can really sink their teeth into to make sure that we are doing the best job on these valuations, that's really huge. I think that's on the data side. What do we do with this new form? Before we get there, though, the impact that this is going to have on lenders, appraisers, appraisal management companies, order management companies, loan origination systems, there are a lot of changes coming. In the 2.6 world, you could order a 1004 and you knew you were expecting a single family property appraisal, right? You could order a 1025 and you knew you were expecting a multifamily property appraisal. That is not true of this new report. So when we're talking about ordering these reports, you folks are going to need to think about, what kind of property am I after? Is this in a PUD? What kind of inspection do I want? There are a lot of questions that you're going to need to be able to answer in the process of even starting to order one of these forms. And we're going to have to make sure that all the systems in this process can take in that information and make the right choices with it. I also think that this is a pretty significant change for appraisers in that they've been used to this form, as David said, for a very, very long time. It's looked pretty darn close since before 2005, long before 2005, when they actually were handwriting them or doing them on typewriters. So this is a really big shift. They're going to have to learn how to use new software, new tools. I think there's a lot to be done.
Yeah, and I'll hop in there. For appraisers, just a lot more structure, a lot less ambiguity, a lot more show your work, exhibits for market conditions and that sort of thing. So there's really a big emphasis, especially from the GSE's perspective, on providing really well-supported appraisals, but also appraisals that contain kind of recreatable and verifiable evidence. That's going to be key. And really, one thing that Ashley said, I've been to a lot of conferences recently where I've seen a lot of software forms providers, and this is almost going to require appraisers to use new technology and new tools in the field. You're going to have to use mobile inspection technology, and there's great technology out there around scanning the homes in order to extract, and we'll talk all about this in our next series, especially tools that can be used and ways to deal with this, but a lot more shift towards mobile technology. Today, only about half of appraisers or less are using any kind of mobile technology to complete their inspections. They're out there with clipboards and graph paper and tape measures or lasers, but still not the same as what's coming. And if that's the approach that you take, these reports are going to take a lot longer to complete. So the entire industry is having to kind of modernize the way that an inspection is done. And so there's going to be a lot of, I think, competition among form software providers, a lot of different approaches. It's not just everybody trying to figure out how to fill a static form, but it's really about how to answer all of the questions that are required and capture all of the data in a way that's going to reduce the amount of form filling type work that they're going to do. And then I think just what that's going to result in for the industry is a lot more clarity, a lot less ambiguity, a lot more, trust but verify. The information is there to verify. I think that's going to create some efficiency, and it's going to help with risk management. The hope is that over time that this can reduce a lot of the back and forth and the noise and the revisions, because more information has to be provided before a report can ever go out the door. So it's really kind of, this is the appraisal bridge to the whole concept of a digital mortgage. This is how the appraisal is going to fit in. So Tony, I don't know what your thoughts are on impact.
Well, I think it's going to be a change all up and down the whole process. A change for as Ashley mentioned, for the people ordering. And we're not going to have form numbers like a 1004 or 2055. We're going to have the same report for every property type. So while they look different, they'll all essentially follow the same form or the same appearance, but with different. I'm too old, but my kids had transformers, and you could, depending on what you did, you could make them look different. And I think you'll see that in this reality, where a 1004, what we used to think of as a 1004, will look just like what David showed on the screen. But when it comes time to, add rental comparables, there'll be additional spaces for appraisers to add rental comparables. So an adjustment all the way along the continuum. The one thing that I see as a positive, and I know, Bill, you put a question in the chat about us old guys, appraisers. I'm an appraiser. I'm leaning into technology, and I hope that most appraisers are going to do that as well. This really allows appraisers that opportunity, because we're going to see a lot of the appraisal forms providers, instead of being a desktop software, it'll be a web-based software. And there'll be a lot of auto population, a lot of information that appraisers would, take hours to gather and create their appraisal. There's going to be a lot of efficiency that's enabled because of the format that the appraisal is completed in. And I'm actually, if I was out in the field, I'd be looking forward to this. And I think for the most part, the professional appraisers will see this as an opportunity, not a challenge, even the old ones.
Thanks, Tony. The next question is, if someone wants to learn more about the UAD 3.6, where should they go for information? What tools should they be using? Is there examples that, resources that somebody would need to know about?
I mean, I think number one is the Fannie Mae UAD website. The website is actually pretty fantastic, guys. And if you haven't been out there, I highly recommend that you go check it out. Whether or not you think it's going to impact your business, it may eventually impact your business, because software forms providers may stop supporting, in certain cases, some of the older forms down the road. So Fannie Mae's got a great website. There's specs on the website, scenarios, there's sample appraisals, there's toolkits. There's guidance that your IT team will understand that I don't understand, that they're going to want to look at. Freddie Mac, exactly the same. There's training online. There's videos that you can watch, webinars, and that sort of thing. And then I also think the appraisal software providers out there especially on the different approaches that they're taking. A lot of the form software providers are offering free periods of time where you can test and use some of their different reports. Some of those are easy to gain access to, so you could create sample reports and start to run those through your QC rules engine, start to refine your QC rules to identify the red flags, address new sections that you've never seen before, such as the green section, which is brand new, and that sort of thing. So I would say there's a lot of sources out there, but I think that there's enough within what the GSEs are providing to where that's really an excellent start. And then just start partnering with your vendors, with your third-party vendors, and that sort of thing, because we've been in this world for a while now. We had to get ready for early adoption, and I won't say we're all the way there, but we're really trying to work hard towards that mandatory date that Tony showed next November, because the GSEs have said that there's going to be a line in the sand that they're going to draw, and they really don't want to back off of that date, and I suspect that they won't. So we're all marching towards that now. And you can't even order one of these today very easily because most of the form software providers aren't ready. So I think just staying abreast of these different third-party components, your LOS and that sort of thing, and asking for their readiness for it and trying to figure out and make sure that everything is going to be supported so that you don't have gaps in your workflow that create a lot of manual busy work at the last minute.
That's a really good point, David. I like to explain it as, y'all know those old Christmas tree lights when you pull one bulb out, the whole light goes off on all of them. If one of your solution providers is not ready, you don't have your chain of lights is not going to light up and you're not going to be able to deliver. So it's not too early to start asking your third-party vendors, are you ready? People like Ashley, people like David, are you prepared for 3.6? And make sure that all your bulbs are going to light up, sometime either at or before November.
Yeah, I just want to echo all of that. I think really getting familiar with what's available on the GSE's websites, a ton of excellent information. And then really talking to your software providers about what matters most to you guys. Are they ready to take in the new file formats that accompany this 3.6? How do they plan on supporting the different pricing and how you're going to order these things? And does the way that one of your providers is handling these things really line up with other providers that you're working with? And can they all communicate with each other? And I think just really getting familiar and talking to everyone in your sort of chain of custody of these valuations and making sure that everybody's on the same page before next fall is really important. And the earlier, the better.
Thanks, guys. And then do you know if there's any like common misconceptions?
I think there's, back to Bill's question, not all old people are adverse to technology or change. I think, as humans, we don't like change, or we would rather keep things the way we are. We don't have a choice. And I think appraisers are going to get in line. Loan processors will learn how to order differently. You make a few mistakes. It's going to take a while to get your muscle memory acclimated to the new way, but we'll get there. Kind of like you buy a new phone and for a week, maybe you struggle. And then 2 weeks later, you forget how the old one worked. So it'll be an adjustment. It'll be a period of time where we maybe struggle, but that's why, to Ashley's point, I don't think you'd want to wait until November 1st to see if everything works. You may not want to, start today because there's no way you can line up all of your vendors to create a lit Christmas tree light string, but pretty soon I think you'll be able to do that, and that would be the time to engage with everyone.
Yeah, and you know what? I've really been encouraged by what I've seen going to just a lot of conferences and industry conferences. There's a lot of appraisers that are really looking forward to this adoption, but it is going to be a huge learning curve. I mean, we've heard that in certain cases, people think that this is just a new form. That's a misconception. It's a complete data-centric workflow shift. It's a complete shift, and adoption is going to be uneven, and that sort of thing. This really is kind of like a change going from paper checks to online banking, right? It's a change to the whole system and not just the format. So, and I think as far as readiness and that sort of thing, I think some lenders and AMCs are moving very quickly and others are still sort of waiting back. And I think some that are waiting back are maybe ones that don't sell into the GSEs and that sort of thing. And that may be the case, that this is not an immediate, urgent change to your business, but I still think that it's, really the form is designed for underwriters and for GSEs and for third parties. It's going to be maybe more difficult, especially for appraisers with the learning curve in the beginning. But I think that once you start realizing no general addendum, enumerated fields, everything structured into where it should be, and especially as appraisers get more used to delivering in that kind of a format, I really feel that as a lender, or you will want to make the change. I think it's easier for borrowers to understand. You don't have all the abbreviations that you have today that nobody knows. Everything is spelled out, and so it's much more readable. I think it's much more user friendly than anything that's been designed in the past. So for all of those reasons, I would say that this is a whole workflow shift, and it's probably one that you're going to want to adopt over time. And so I think those are some of the misconceptions and some of the ways that people are preparing.
Great. Since this is the first of the series, what should we expect to learn in the upcoming series?
I'll hop in there as well. I mean, I think today was just our goal today is really just a foundation. We're in the early adoption phase. Okay, so we've progressed that far, and in order to do that, everyone on this call has been working on this for about a year and a half. That's our job. I think what I would say now is if you've gotten started, fantastic. If you haven't gotten started, you want to look into what to do next and how to meet those timelines if they're applicable to you. But our hope today was just to kind of lay out that foundation, direct you to a few resources, establish a bit of a timeline, and so that your teams can go in and begin to get familiar with all of these changes. My hope is that the next time, this is a 3-part series, so thank you very much for that. It's a wonderful opportunity, and we're very, very grateful to have the chance to speak with everybody. But I think next we'd like to talk about some of the specifics, more of the specifics in the changes, some of the specific requirements, maybe things that we've run into that are going to be a bit unusual, and then how to start, applying technology to those areas. And I think finally we want to end on just overall readiness, industry readiness, any changes to the timelines, tools that you might use, especially if you feel unprepared as we get closer to the mandatory date, and options and that sort of thing. So I kind of want to impress upon everybody that it's not too late if you haven't started thinking about this, but it's certainly time to start thinking about it now, and really to start taking advantage of some of those resources and partnering with your third parties, not trying to do it all in a silo. Because we've got a lot of lessons learned at this point, and so I think your third-party partners are going to be some of the best allies that you have in making this transition.
All right, great. Did you guys want to take some questions that we got incoming? All right.
Absolutely.
One of the questions that we had was, how do we best position clients, loan officers, and other industry stakeholders to take advantage of the benefits of this change while mitigating the negative impacts?
Well, I'll take that one. I think for the most part, Candy, we don't have a choice as industry participants. The timeline has been established, and it's everyone's obligation to be ready and deliver at the mandate, because you'll no longer be able to use the 2.6 or the current format. So for the next 13 months, time best spent educating, informing, getting a plan in place. I used to work at a bank, as many of you did. I understand the glacial speed that banks operate on. So you can't start too soon to have the discussion, highlight important key dates, and develop a plan, and then plan your work your plan.
Thanks, Tony.
Well, and also I'll just hop in real quick. I think, everybody's got an IT prioritization list. And so, we all have to deal with those. And so you can't get things in front of your IT team fast enough, because I think what they're going to find is there's unusual touch points all over the place. The appraisal has been sort of foundational, along with processing and underwriting and originations, to sort of how mortgage operates. And so it touches in so many places. It's unbelievable. I wish I had a slide. There's a slide that I saw at a recent conference that shows all of the different places that an appraisal touches your process, including, down the road, and when loans are being sold to investors and that sort of thing outside of the GSEs. And so I just think that you really can't get it in front of your IT team fast enough.
Okay. The next question I have is coming through the chats. And the question is around, how do you guys foresee this impacting fees and turn times and the impact to borrowers?
I can speak a little bit on this. I'll be honest. I, I don't think we're entirely sure. To David's point a little bit earlier, in the beginning, these files are going to take appraisers a bit longer. There's going to be a learning curve. They're going to be learning to use new technology. The inspections out in the field, depending on the technology that they're leveraging, may take them a bit longer. But having all of that information fed directly into their form through their technology may speed up the back end of the process. So given that the appraisal software providers are, for the most part, sort of still in development and still getting what will be the final versions of their appraisal software for the 3.6 reports out to the masses, I think how long it's going to take these appraisers and what exactly they're going to want to charge for these, I think a little bit remains to be seen. But I'm interested in hearing if you guys have any other ideas.
I would agree. It's too early to determine a price, and it's really not our job to, set the prices, but the market will. I think with the additional technology, there's going to be many different ways that an appraiser can complete an appraisal. And really, that's going to dictate more of the fee than anything. If the appraiser relies on a web-based system to complete the report, he's certainly more, or she's certainly more efficient. But there's going to be fees that come with that. They're going to change from a annual subscription to maybe a per click or per appraisal fee, and it might be way more than what they're paying today. But if they're not going out to the site, if it's a hybrid appraisal or some other way to manufacture their appraisal, maybe their time is less, not as much as it is if they did the whole thing. More like the dentist than with the hygienist instead of the dentist doing the whole thing. So I think it's too soon, but it depends on how you order the appraisal and how you want it done.
And I'd love to add one other thing. So this is a great question, and it's a question that we've been asking ourselves for a long time. So believe me, we're not just trying to come up with an answer on the fly. I'll give you guys a little bit of reality. I'm concerned a little bit about certain rural markets where coverage today is light. If somebody decides not to continue and not to use this new format in those areas, we could have holes in coverage, especially in rural markets. So I think that that's a possibility that could impact both fees and turn times. I do think most appraisers in urban markets are going to adopt. So I think that that's really good news. To Tony's point, I think there's going to be other ways to complete an appraisal, such as starting with property data collection. But one other thing that we're dealing with these days at least in the AMC world, is that between with waivers and that sort of thing out there, a lot of the work that we're seeing today is far more complex for appraisers anyway. And so when you add kind of a huge change in how they do work and you add that to complex properties, that makes it harder. So I think at first it could take appraisers, maybe it takes appraisers twice as long. I think it really depends on your software, your process, your workflow, and that sort of thing. So not sure. And I think the other thing that could be a big player is, we all know the Fed already met quarter of an interest rate down. If the Fed keeps meeting and interest rates keep dropping, volume will go up. And when that happens, so if volume goes up at the same time that appraisers are learning a new form and a new format and that sort of thing, those impacts are also unknown. But typically in a low rate environment, we have a restrained capacity environment, and supply and demand drives the fees up. And so it's hard to say where it's all going to go. But one thing's for sure is there are going to be changes, and there are going to be some that we can anticipate and others that we can't. And the learning curve is going to be it's going to take a little while for appraisers to not only figure out how to do this report, but also if they're not satisfied with their forms provider and their workflow, they're going to have to maybe learn on a few different systems before they really lock in. Over time, however, this report lends itself to something that could be much faster and to complete once all of those pieces are finally put together. It's just a question of how long that's going to take.
Thanks, guys. The next question is kind of around what Tony touched upon about adopting new technology into the workflow process. The question is, what AI platform are AMCs and appraisers using?
AI is a really, even though it's just 2 letters, it's a really big word because it means so many different things. And today we're hearing about AI, and it's really just a formula in an Excel spreadsheet, but it's kind of a buzzword. But I think you're going to see a funneling effect of technology. I'll say not just AI, but um, large language models, computer vision, other kinds of things that normally we would do on our own. Think pencil and paper, and all of a sudden we're given a calculator. It's going to be much more efficient. It'll be integrated into the appraisal process and into the appraisal review process. And I think the outcome will be a much more accurate appraisal through the advent or addition, inclusion, introduction of technology in general.
I want to just add one note here. To Tony's point, AI is it's a giant umbrella, right? The way that we use it in the industry. And I think that any platforms, any tools that you and your organization are using can at this point include some AI, right? Can it help you improve, automate, or, repeated tasks? Can it help you drive workflows? Can it help you any corner of your business, any of the software and tools that you use? I think you should be talking to your providers and asking them if they're not already including these kinds of automated workflows and large language models and computer vision. Do they plan to? How do they plan to? How is that going to serve you in your business? There are so many ways to approach this stuff. And I think that for you and your organization, the best bet is to decide what you need and talk to your providers. And if they can't offer that, talk to others, ask around. I think this is a great time for it as everybody's making these shifts. You're going to need software providers that can work with you and work together through these changes.
Yeah, and just some of the things that I've seen practically, and I don't know whether we're talking Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, Julius AI. There's a lot out there, and they're all good at different things. Some are better, for example, on the language portion, and others are better on the analytics, as for example, just from the generative AI technology. But some of the uses that I've seen are, the appraisal, the form software uploads the selling guide and runs against the selling guide requirements as you're completing the report. You upload the letter of engagement, all the client and assignment specific instructions, and it flags and maybe says, hey, do you realize with an ADU, this specific lender requires this commentary, or it's well and septic. You need to also talk about whether or not the comps are on well and septic and if it impacts marketability. Every lender is really different in how they interpret the guides. And so being able to get those lender-specific, assignment-specific instructions is really important. Uploading a purchase agreement and being able to quickly get the answer. And of course, with all of this, because of hallucinations and other things, you have to go out and validate, but the ability to suck that information forward right in front of you makes it so much less likely that you're going to miss these kinds of conditions. Seen companies that have uploaded their entire employee handbooks just for quick reference purposes. And so really you're going to be able, and that's just on the generative piece. Home Vision is fantastic at running large language models so that they can identify whether language in the report is subjective based on its context or not, and flagging those words and then making it really efficient to go through the report, highlighting everywhere that it is in the report and linking you directly to there. And, Respi AI's computer vision technology, being able to not only identify the condition and quality of the subject property based on its interior photos, but being able to go out and scour the MLS instantaneously to look at all of the interior photos of the comparable sales that were used and identify whether it thinks those were reported accurately. All the way to being included in the workflow so that the appraiser eventually just has to show up at the house, take photos of the outside or scan the outside, take photos of the inside or scan the inside, and have most of the information based on the inspection extracted out, put into the appraisal report, and then the appraiser goes through the job of validating to make sure it's correct. Can there be false positives? Sure. Is luxury vinyl flooring hard to identify versus hardwoods? Absolutely. But appraisers will become used to that. And as they see those things in the report, being able to make the changes on the fly, the goal is so that when they're done with the inspection, they have an enormous amount of the report already completed and ready to go. All the way up into, in some worlds, being able to upload a completed report, being 95% complete, 90% complete by the time you get back to your office.
That sounds so great. We have one final question, and that came through the Q&A section for the webinar. How does this apply to 5+ multifamilies?
So if it's
Short
five,
answer,
if it's
short answer
yeah.
is- short answer, it doesn't. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac only accept single family up to 4 units. I don't think if you see an appraisal 5 units, that should be a big red flag. But I don't think you'll see too many.
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for the great conversation. I look forward to the next two in the series, which will be coming in the first quarter of 2026 and sometime in the third quarter of 26. So there's got a lot of upcoming changes for sure. If you guys are going to NAMB National, PCV Murcor will be there. So if you guys want, stop by, say hi. We can have more further conversations about this whole topic, AI, or just have a good time in Vegas. So I want to thank everybody for attending this webinar, and I look forward to the future webinars sessions that are going to come up. And thank you so much again to the STEAM panelists that we had. So thank you so much, David, Ashley, and Tony, for your time. Have a good one, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you.